There are only two main reasons why the US stock market had risen. Central banks printed money and directly bought US shares. And number two, companies bought billions and billions of dollars worth of their own shares, massively pushing the price higher. This is at a record high right now. So as the volume slows down, liquidity dries up, companies have to come to their own rescue. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we're going to look at the issue of stock buybacks. I want to talk about central banks today. I want to talk about inflation and so much more. Let's begin. Apple plows US tax cuts into record share buybacks. So they're bringing that profit back. The only question is, what are they going to do with it? In this case, they used a large percentage of that to buy back their own stock. When a company does this, it's going to push the price of that stock higher. It's not just Apple that's doing this. There are several companies, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So how much are we talking here? Are we talking like thousands of dollars, maybe $100,000 worth? Well, it's a little bit more than that. Apple bought back $23.5 billion of its own stock in the March quarter. That is a record amount for any U.S. company, and it added $100 billion to its target for future repurchases. We are talking about massive amounts of money. Even for a company of this size, to buy back $23 billion and then talking about $100 billion, you know that this company is sitting on a big pile of cash and they are not going to put it into research and development. They're not going to be able to put this into buying new companies and doing good things with it. They are sitting on the pile, buying back their own shares, and ultimately waiting. And I do believe, as I've said before, that companies like this are just waiting for the next financial crisis to buy up companies for pennies on the dollar. All right. Going further into this article, there was quite a bit of information here. You can see that they are, in fact, giving more on their dividends. That is a very good sign. And I wanted to interject this here. For anybody investing in equities, I believe that the best stocks are those that give dividends, because you buy, you hold for long periods of time, and you make passive income. So the stock may decline by 50%, but you still get that income coming in. And of course, dividends are taxed at a lower rate than you would with capital gains. So you don't necessarily want to sell, you want to make that passive income. So remember that. You can win in more than one way. The only issue is that you need to see how they reacted during the financial crisis. Did they stop giving out dividends for a period of time? Did they reduce their dividends? And how long have they been giving dividends? Are they increasing, decreasing, all these things? You need to look into that before you just realize, oh, they give a dividend. It's not so black and white. All right. The amount that Apple spent buying its shares in those 3 months exceeded the stock market value of most companies in the S&P 500. Think about that. The amount of shares it bought back is bigger than other companies. That's huge, to say the least. And so I don't think that a lot of the financial industry can really wrap their head around what's happening here. This is a major cash injection. It's not some, small thing. This should be one of the primary thoughts going behind any analyst, whether that's some sort of independent person or whether that's, an individual working for one of these major institutions. They're buying back shares. You need to track that. You need to focus on that. That is absolutely critical. The first quarter of 2018 was the biggest quarter on record for buyback announcements, with $242 billion worth of buybacks announced by US companies. Insane. $240 billion in buybacks in a quarter. Well, when you look at this and how it's going to play out over 2018, I think that buybacks are going to be such a major factor. We need to know that. Okay? Other companies like Facebook, $9 billion. And, there's so many more. I've covered it here on the channel before. I've shown you the companies. I've shown you the lists. And I've shown you the amounts. It is incredible to see that they are expanding to what looks like $100 billion worth for a single company. All right. Now, I'm going to show you this. I've quoted this website before. I think that everybody should be looking at this, and there are others out there, of course. Whale Wisdom. All right. I've shown you a few before. You can look at my how-to and solutions. I believe I have a video in there, or maybe it's in my free e-course. I've done a video about it before, how to look into this yourself. But you can go to this website, whalewisdom.com, and you can see for yourself the funds that hold Apple. You can see how much they own of it. You can see how their market value here, percentage of the portfolio, how many shares they have, etc. One of the things I found interesting, first of all, obviously Vanguard, BlackRock, but Berkshire Hathaway. Berkshire owns, look at this, 165 million shares. Am I reading that right? I mean, that's insane. They have 15% of their portfolio inside of Apple, and they've increased, as you can see here. Looking at this, it truly shows us that first you have the central banks, number one. Let me just draw it out. Number two, you have the share buybacks. And then number three, you have the institutional investors. And number four, in really small, tiny little font here, minnows. All the minnows, all the little fish. Central banks print money, buy shares. All of that easy money eventually finds its way into the hands of companies like Apple. They buy back their own shares. Then the institutional investors, big names like Berkshire Hathaway, step in, buy up the shares. That makes up another significant chunk. And then you have everybody else tagging along. Okay? That's individuals. Understand the entire program, how it works, how it's going. You think that it has anything to do with how many phones Apple sells? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Okay, very quickly, I want to touch on all the rest of these points. I've gone on way too long already. Okay, oil prices are near their highest levels since 2014. So with oil levels near their highest levels here in 4 years now, we are looking at an issue that will present itself, because ultimately that means inflation is in the system. And this individual right here said the red flags are everywhere. We are finally getting the inflation that to date has been so elusive. Rising costs stoking fears the Fed will raise interest rates more times than expected this year. I certainly hope they do. I hope they increase interest rates. I hope they continue to really expand on this policy of tightening, which we haven't seen really anything historically extremely accommodative, but I want to see that change, and that would ultimately, if it could happen and the market can still continue on, that means it's stronger today. I don't think that's the case, but if it could, if the Federal Reserve, for example, was actually able to unwind this balance sheet, and I know a lot of people are scared about that because they bought a lot of FANG stocks, and they know that, hey, if interest rates decide that they want to be increased by the Fed, that's going to hurt stocks. But if they could withstand higher rates, that's a good sign. This Egyptian billionaire, I think he's the number 2 in all of Egypt, not your typical gold bug. He actually said that he's going to invest half of his net worth, $5.7 billion, in gold. I think that's interesting. You don't hear about that too often, and I know that this will be bullish for a lot of gold bugs out there. Just wanted to bring it to you. Now turning over to the country with the highest inflation rate right now that I'm aware of, Venezuela. Well, this individual got her severance pay after 5 years working as a cardiologist. She let out a laugh of sheer disbelief. It was barely enough for a cup of coffee. Barely enough. Well, you can see here IMF figures show 13,000% inflation. I've shown you before. You can actually look online, do a search for Café con Leche Index Bloomberg, and you will get the actual index, which showed, I think it was either 20 or 30,000%, using a cup of coffee as the indicator there. Anyway, this person puts out this tweet showing you they gave her basically 156,000 bolivars. That equates to 20 cents. 20 cents. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. And last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know that you will find my books, The Money GPS, and my newer release, Global Economic Collapse, even more informative. If you want to check these books out, you can do so at the link in the description. It will take you over to Amazon, where you can actually flip through the pages of the books for yourself. Take care.